Well, today I'm going to show you some really amazing features in Adobe Camera Raw as we build a dramatic landscape. Hi, I'm Joel Grimes. I am a commercial advertising photographer. Been doing this for well over 40 years. When I started out, actually, I was a landscape photographer. Most of you may know me as a portrait photographer. That's kind of what I've been doing mostly over the last 35 years or so. But when I was in college, I wanted to be a landscape photographer. Had the big 4x5 camera with the dark cloth and tromping around the desert and whatever, making beautiful pictures. And I still love going out. I just released the a landscape master class. I spent 10 days in Utah, southern Utah, and 10 days in Oregon, and just had an absolutely blast. So one of the images that I got from the trip was this image of Goblin Valley here. So let me show you the raw, I say raw, the unedited photo, and the finished one. 95% of everything done for that image was done in Adobe Camera Raw using mask. Now it made available this image for you to download to practice, to follow along. Now, since I shot this with a 17 tilt shift in 3 positions, it turned out to be a 130 megapixel capture. A little bit of overkill, I think, for demo purposes. So I have sent along a pretty high-res TIFF for you to go and manipulate along with me. And I'm going to work on that right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my bridge. And so you can do this from Lightroom, folks. People ask me, why don't you use Lightroom? Well, so Lightroom and bridge with Raw, Adobe Raw, work from the exact same engine. Lightroom has some options that you can't do in Bridge. Pretty much everything you do in Bridge, you can do in Lightroom. But for the most part, everything I need to do to manipulate an image is right here in Bridge in Adobe Raw, Camera Adobe Raw. And so that's kind of where I've been. And so I have not learned Lightroom. I've dabbled with it a little bit, but no expert in Lightroom. So we are selected on the image. I am going to use the shortcut Command R, which takes me to Raw Converter. So here we have our unedited image, like I was just shot out of the camera. Not very exciting, kind of a boring image. We're going to build some drama on this. So let's do this first. We're going to go immediately over, without doing anything yet, we're going to immediately go over to my masking option, which is the 4th icon from the top. Well, actually the 5th, because there's a little thing there, but it's the 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a little circle with some dotted kind of outline around it. So we click on there, and I'm going to say select sky. And the reason why I'm doing it now, because I'm going to convert this to black and white, is because it's when it does a select sky, it's using color as part of its, I guess, finding where the sky is. And so before I convert it to black and white, I want to make a mask for the sky. So that's something I do, even if I know I'm going to convert it to black and white, I'm going to do it that. And I might also add one more. So we're going to go up here, create a new mask again. We're going to go to color range this time, and we're going to click on my gargoyle goblin. Let's pick right there. And so that's created a mask right there. And so I'm not going to manipulate it yet, but it's sitting there now for me. I think that's enough for now. So we're going to go back to basics. My little slider thing up here, which gets me back to basics. I'm in basic. And now I'm going to hit convert to black and white. So you have auto, and then there's convert to black and white. And now we're in black and white mode, all right? So let's take our sliders here and begin the process of adjusting this to give that drama that I showed you in that final that I did before. So we're gonna build, let's see, we're gonna pull it down a little bit here. Let's go contrast. We're gonna go highlights to the left, shadows to the right, pull the whites a little bit. Now, all these sliders I'm going to readjust later, but I'm just giving a little starting point to get me going here. We scroll down here, and I can take a little texture, a little clarity, and a little bit of haze. All right. Again, I'm not locked in. So we're going to go down to Color Mixer. So I'm going to click on Color Mixer. And here's some magic. There's not a lot of red in this scene, but there's a lot of orange. So we're going to slide the orange to the right a little bit. A little bit of yellow, not much. There's no green. Nothing in the aqua. Blue, yes. So we'll pull the blue to the left just a little bit, maybe the purple to the left, and the magenta. All right, so we're getting closer to building some drama, but we're not done yet. We're going to keep going. So let's go back to our masks. So I'm going to go back to my sky mask, click on it. Now it's got this little, I'm colorblind, but it's either blue or purple, who knows what color it is. It's on the blue spectrum. And that's telling me where my mask is. Now I can uncheck that, but by leaving it there, I know that's where my mask is. And the minute I go to make an adjustment, it goes away. So let's pull down the sky a little bit. We're going to slide the contrast to the right. Highlights to the left just a little bit. Not much in shadows left there. White will pick up a little bit of punch to it. Black, again, not locked in. So let's take our overlay off. Okay, it's working. All right, so now we're going to go to the mask that I had on the base bottom. All right, so let's take a look here, and we're going to build contrast there. And so I'm running my contrast all the way as far as I can go. Highlights, not much there. Shadows, a little bit. Punch the whites just a tad. Maybe blacks just a little bit down. All right, let's add another mask. We got enough masks, we can just keep going forever. So we're going to hit Add Mask. We're going to go to Linear Gradient. So we're going to start from the bottom and pull up. I'm going to let go, and I'm going to pull my exposure to the right, but I almost always pull my when I do this kind of thing, I pull my contrast to the left because it's going to build contrast. So we're going to pull that to about there. Now, if you notice that on my the right side of my frame here is a little lighter than the left side. So I'm going to balance that out by hitting Subtract, Brush, pick a brush. We're going to go at 50% density, so that's means I'm applying half of what the mask is. The flow I usually keep at 100%. And so now if you notice, there's two circles. One's got little dotted, sort of like highlight dotted circle, and then there's a solid one in the middle. Now, when I have it on auto mask here, which is important. So when I go and I move around something, so long as that little black line doesn't cross into something, it will automatically adjust. It's a pretty amazing little thing. We'll do some more of it in a minute, but just to let you know, I've got it on auto mask, and I'm just going to touch along there just a little bit. And if I went too much, I go Command Z, and I take my, let's go back to here, Subtract, Brush, and we're going to take my density down a little bit more. So let's just pull a little bit back. So I want to feather the two, kind of match each other. All right, because that gradient came from the bottom up and it caused it to go dark from the bottom up. So let's go to a new mask, and we're going to go linear gradient again, but this time from the top down. And we don't want to overdo this, but let's pull it down, move my contrast to the left, pull it down. And I say, not bad. All right. So there's a really dark little cloud over here. Don't like that. And also up here, it got a little too dark. So I'm going to go back to Subtract while I have it here, Brush. And I'm just going to make sure my density is really low here, 25-ish. I'm going to pull that back just a little bit because you got too much. And then I'm going to create a new mask, Brush. And let's go about 50% here. I'm going to make the brush smaller. And you can do that by your bracket keys. I've got my little Wacom pen set up so that I toggle along here and it makes my brush bigger and smaller. All right. So we're going to paint right along here. And then we're going to lighten that up just a little bit. And I'm going to do it. Whoops. Yeah. Now I got a little too much in there, so let me go to brush and just paint back that one little area. Now we're going to do it one more time. Create a mask, brush, and we're going to paint. Let's go 70%, and we're going to go right along there, and I'm going to get rid of that little dark spot. So I'm going to feather it a little bit. Just look too much like it was popping out there. All right, let's get our goblin to really pop. So we're going to make another mask. Brush. I've got an auto mask here. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit too. And let's pull it up, and we're going to paint. And I'll let the little checkered line go outside of the, let's go to 100% on our mask here. And we're going to go along here. And I'm just going to paint, and it auto selects it. There's a little spot right there I need to get. A little spot right there. And if I go too far, I can always use a subtract. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my density down, and as I come down here, we're going to still put the mask, but it's going to be a little less effect. All right, let's go back down. All right, so let's make this thing pop. All right, so let's go to exposure, bring it up, build contrast a little bit, highlights go to the left, shadows, not too much on the shadows, and then let's pull up the whites, and then I think we'll take the blacks just a tad down. Okay, now, if you notice, this little section right here got a little too much in that little section. So we go to subtract, brush, and we're at, let's go 50%, and we're going to paint that back in just a little bit because I don't want it to look like I selected it. Little mask. Okay? So let's go back down. We're not done yet. We are still on there, so we're going to bring it up a little bit more, a little more contrast. But it's holding back a little bit there. I can do it in stages too, but let's go now, make another mask. We're going to go to the Radial gradient, and we're going to pull it from the center. I can also pick it up and move it around. So we want the drama to happen, but you want to force you into the image. So let's do that now. But in this case, I'm going to pull my contrast to the right. Oh, and I have to reverse it. So up here at the Radial gradient, I have to hit reverse. There we go. And then as I go down here, you may say, Joel, you're going too far. We can go back. We can go back to our basic. So let's get out of mask. Let's go to basic. And I'm going to pull my temperature over just a little bit to the right. That gives me a little more drama there. Because I'm in black and white, doesn't matter. I'm just changing the overall, warming it up a little bit. So let's bring my exposure up a little bit. Let's take my contrast a little bit more. Let's take shadows up. Ooh, we don't go too far on the shadows. And then whites. Now let's go back to my mask. I see a couple spots that I want to fix. One is, let's get this out of the way here, is this little area here I don't like. So we're going to hit create mask. We're going to hit brush. We're going to have density at around 50%. Let's just paint a little bit along here. And then let's bring that down just a little bit. Pull the contrast and bring it down just a little bit. Okay, I'm liking that. Still feel a little hot there. So let's go back. Here's the beauty of this whole thing, is I can go back, come on, pick it up. I can go back to all these masks and fix things. So let's go to the gradient here. And I say, you know what? I want to subtract a couple of the corners. This got a little too dark in here. So we're at 50%. And I bring back a little bit of that and maybe this corner up here. And then I'm going to go to my goblin, and we're going to take a look at this again and make sure that it's popping. And like I said, maybe I went a little too far. So since I had a, this is the minus brush, I can go along here. Actually, let's go back, take a look here. And I'm just filling it back in. So basically I can go back indefinitely and just play around with these masks. That's the beauty of this. So let's say I go, you know what, that bottom was too dark. Okay, so I go over here, I click on it, I go back over here and I pull that bottom up a little bit. And I think, well, you know, that's really dark there. I don't like that. Let's add another mask brush and let's paint in here a little bit and see if we can pull that up just a little bit. That looks pretty good. Maybe I go back to my vignette here now that I've sort of lightened the corners. We'll add just a little bit more drama there. And if I went too far on my, let's go back to my gargoyle here. Let's say I went too far. Darkening, I still need my contrast. And here's the thing. Let's say I build this mask and I go, you know what? I've really botched this thing up. Let's delete it. Delete mask 7. There it is. Okay, we start over. Create a mask. Go to the brush. This is the power of this is incredible. And this little gargoyle thing here is the most important one to get right. All right, so let's pick it up. And then let's go build some contrast, highlights, shadow, ooh, too much, whites, okay. And then we go back and subtract brush, and we do it very subtly this time. So let's go down to 15% and just paint back that little section there. Okay, I think I like that. Let's go back to my basics. Overall, maybe I went a little too far down here on the vignette. You know, let's bring it up a little bit here. Maybe I didn't go enough on the top, so let's go back to my mask. You can see where I'm going here. It just, I've never even, well, let's go to the top mask there. I haven't even gotten to Photoshop yet. And that's what I love about this. So we're going to darken that just a little bit more. Maybe pull back my contrast. All right. You know, I'm a little bit not 100% happy with this little section on the gargoyle. I say gargoyle, goblin. Let's go back one more time. We're going to find that mask, and we're going to pull down the contrast just a little bit. Right about there. All right, like it. Okay, so this is where I have to make a decision. If I was working in RAW, so let's say I did stitch my images, I created a DNG, the DNG I drop in here, it's a RAW file, I come to this point, even if this TIFF, I'm in this point, I've done all this work to it, and I say, I don't want to lose that, right? Well, if you hit the shift, when you click on open, or you see the open says open object, it's going to be open as a smart object. So I click on it. Now it brings over this image to Photoshop, but it still retains all this ability for me to go back and still have all those masks and everything waiting for me. That's the beauty of this whole thing. So let me hit tab. So there's my little icon that tells me I have a smart object. So let's say I want to move on, but I don't want to lose this. So what I do is I hold down the Option and I put my little cursor over this Goblin Valley original. This is that little thing right there where the mask is, or not the mask, but the layer. And I just click. Sorry, it's Control. Control, right click, we can always say right click. Where is it? New Smart Object via copy. So now I have two separate copies, and I can go back on either one, but right now what I want to do is just save the bottom one, so then I right click again and go to rasterize layer. So now I can go and manipulate this one, but still, in case for some reason I go and I want to go back, I have that tied there. But what I want to do is I want to look at this. Let's get rid of properties for a second. And I would say, you know, it's a little flat. So we're going to go over here. We're going to create a new layer, levels. And I'm going to look at my levels here. And I notice that we got this little mountain and definitely have a black. But I might want to take that black over just a fraction. We're talking a hair, maybe 3 to 5, something like that. And when I make a print on my printer, I'm going to have some super deep blacks. I want that. Now my highlights, you can see a line. The mountain comes down. My graph here comes down. Call it the mountain. And right here, whoops, I didn't want to do that. Let's go back to 0 here, or 100%. I'll pull my whites over. Okay, there is not a bad place to be, right? You're at the clipping point of your whites, but there's a flat line there. So what I usually do is I bring that over a little bit, watch my image, then I go over here to the mask, click on it, go over to my brush, go to black brush, and let's say I go about 50%, and I can paint back a little bit of the areas that I'm thinking are a little bit too blown out. Right, here's a little spot over here. And I'm not locked in here, by the way, because it's just an adjustment layer. But then I'll go over here and I'll play with this a little bit more. Maybe bring my midtones down a little bit, bring some drama. So I'm getting pretty close. Maybe I bring this up just a fraction. So on my monitor, that looks pretty darn good. I'm thinking that's pretty dramatic. So I'm going to do one last thing. I'm going to hit Command E, which will merge that down, and Command J, which gives me a duplicate. So I have two duplicate copies of the same image above my Smart Object one. And I'm going to go over here to, and this is really just a personal preference. I go to Blur, Gaussian Blur, and between 10 and 15 radius, the more blur you have, the more dramatic it is. And we're going to pull this down to 0 for a second, the opacity, and we're going to go to soft light. Now, watch what happens when I start to pull my opacity up. It starts to get this creamy, sort of mystical feel to the thing. And I've been doing this for 15, if not 18 years. I stumbled across this years ago playing around, and that's how I finish off my dramatic landscapes. So let's just go back to the original. There was the original, pretty darn boring, and then there was the final. That's the one I did before, big difference. So I hope you learned something in using the masking features in Adobe Camera Raw or in Lightroom. They sit over there also. What I would do if I was you is, we'll play with this image. Hopefully you can follow along with me. But go maybe to an image that you thought was kind of boring, didn't really come out right, the sky wasn't quite correct. Go back to one of your images, play with it, just like what we just did. I mean, you saw the first part of this image. It's not really a keeper until you start doing all this. You go, oh, you know what? That could be a keeper. So that's what Photoshop and photography is all about, is getting to your end result. So I always say photography is sort of like 50% of the creative vision and work is the capture part, and then 50% is the Photoshop part. I remember back in the day when people said, well, if you're not a real photographer if you end up manipulating in Photoshop. Well, that's not true, because number one, I'm not a photographer. I'm an artist with a set of tools, which happens to be a camera and Photoshop. So that's how I get around that. I mean, I studied and got a degree in photography, but I look at myself as an artist first and foremost, and therefore I have I guess you'd say, the freedom, the license to go and manipulate to get to my end result. Ansel Adams did it, not in Photoshop, but he did it in the darkroom. And so we lift Ansel Adams as being the father of landscape photography, but somehow we, draw all these lines that restrict us from really getting to our end result. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you feel like subscribing and hitting the notification bell, stick with what I'm doing. I'm hoping to add more of this content on YouTube for you guys. So I hope to see you soon.